it shouldn't be a surprise that Elon Musk has completely rebranded the Twitter. And there's no hiding that Elon Musk believes the letter X actually represents a better message for the Twitter users. And for so long, and we know that, again, according to Musk, that X would be the center in audio, video, messaging, payment, banking. So in other words, based on what he described for the purpose of Twitter, it's no longer just a social media platform and actually it serves much greater purposes. But meanwhile, if we look at the geopolitical change today, particularly in the US and also with the international relationships, people start to question the motivation of Twitter. And again, initially, when people started to understand Twitter as this social media platform, but meanwhile today, this has become one of the mechanisms for political force. And also, could this social media change complete strategy in order to win over the users? Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to invite our distinguished speaker. Again, if you follow our show, you should be familiar with the Dr. Chakravorti. Again, Dr. Chakravorti is the Dean of Global Business at the Fletcher School at Tufts University. And also, he's also the founding executive director of Fletcher's Institute for Business in the Global Context, and also the founder and chair of Digital Planet. Well, Dr. Chakravorti, and welcome back to The Missing Piece.
Thank you for having me, Will.
Well, again, sir, I want to get started. As we mentioned before, recently, an earth-shattering move that put out by Elon Musk that changed the logo of a bird completely to a single letter. Of course, on social media, he's been very proud and he's been very boastful about this logo. But meanwhile, people start to question the strategy and also the motivation behind the change and also behind this business. Sir, last time you and I, we had the conversation. If I remember correctly, you are the one who came out with the article to say that in order to save Twitter, and Musk should resign from the post. So based on the current strategy, based on the current move, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's almost hard to comprehend what could be an underlying strategy behind the ongoing developments at Twitter, or what used to be the company that used to be called Twitter. The change to X, you can kind of see the logic for this. This is an issue that Elon Musk has been quite obsessed by for a long time. In fact, way back, long before he had any interest in Twitter, he was part of the founding team of a company called PayPal that many of you will remember. And at that time, he actually wanted to incorporate PayPal as X.com. So he has been obsessed with the idea of X being a symbol or a representative of a site or an app that can do many different things for people. And so his vision for Twitter has been that this would be more than just a messaging app. It would be essentially a Swiss Army knife of apps, very much like WeChat in China. And so his idea is to, and even at the point when he was investing in Twitter and taking over, he did have a plan to convert it into this X app, and it would take on many different functions, including communicating, messaging, payments, and so on and so forth. So I think all of that is just fine. The one tiny problem is that Twitter users are extremely dissatisfied with where the platform is. It has lost about 50% of its advertising revenues. It's bleeding money. And Twitter or X has brought on a new CEO, Linda Yaccarino, who's an advertising executive with many, many years of experience. And she has been essentially handed a very difficult job, which is to turn this, this enterprise around. And so Elon Musk is technically not the CEO anymore, but he's clearly the person who's calling the shots and making the big decisions. Now, one more thing that has also transpired in the middle of all this is that Facebook, or the Facebook parent company Meta, launched its own competitor to Twitter or X, and that competitor is Threads. And it's unclear whether Threads is going to be a real competition for Twitter or not. But at least in the initial few days, it gathered a lot of followers. And of course, much of that followership has dropped away. But there are a lot of things going on in this space.
Well, that's right, Professor. Again, when we look at Twitter, again, as we mentioned before, initially it was it was considered as one of the most popular social media giants. Again, it dominates almost globally except for some countries. But again, after Musk decided to change the logo from the little cute bird into the letter X, his simple explanation was the letter X represents infinity. So in other words, again, Professor, based on what you said, Twitter should no longer just be a platform for exchanging messages and, again, building relationships, enlarging social networks, but also, one thing quite interesting, again, as we mentioned before, Musk, his ambition is to turning this social media platform into something that related to banking and also related to investment. Again, as you mentioned before, could be similar to the WeChat that people use in China. But one thing we know that, if I'm not mistaken, Facebook tried before, again, tried to come out with their own currency, tried to mess with the whole banking system. Again, the conversation did not go anywhere. Professor, from your perspective, how risky is Musk today when they play the game with the banking by implementing or combining the money with the social media today? And also, how do you think users are going to understand it for the original purpose of the platform? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things. One is I never necessarily consider history as a prologue to the future. If you think about what Elon Musk has done in other domains, such as essentially building the electric car industry, from a very low base. Historically, the electric car industry was supposed to be dead, and Elon Musk, essentially created it with his launch of Tesla. So I wouldn't necessarily say just because Mark Zuckerberg failed to put banking and financial transactions on his social media platforms, Elon Musk is going to have the same experience. It's just that right now, everything that we're seeing about what's happening on Twitter is that users are increasingly dissatisfied by where the platform is. And it's critical for it not only to keep its users, but also keep the users engaged, and for it to be a credible place where people want to hang out and spend time. And it's only when you hang out and spend time on an app that people then start thinking of using it for other purposes, whether it's for banking or payments or other things. So it's pretty clear that Elon Musk does have, an understanding of aspects of the payments industry. That's kind of where he started, or at least it's one of his kind of early companies. So he has a sense of that space. It's just that the moment that he is in right now makes it very, very difficult to imagine consumers being so completely enthralled by this one platform and then using it for multiple purposes. So if I were a betting person, I would say, no, he's not going to succeed. But my bet is not based on history because, a guy like Musk is somebody who actually defies history in many ways.
Professor, how much do you think Elon Musk actually understands the users today? I mean, again, on one thing, he's very actively engaged with the users. Again, we've seen the post on the social media platforms and ask questions one another. Again, some questions are very thought-provoking, but other questions or other statements are just, I guess, random statements. But meanwhile, again, as this leader in this company, again, he purchased at the first place. Clearly he had a bigger picture for it. But meanwhile, again, Professor, I'm not the expert, but you are. But one thing I do know is as a Twitter user myself, when I get on the social media, I'm looking for engagements, I'm looking for changes, and hopefully the leader can actually understand what we're looking for. So the fundamental question to you is, how much do you think Musk really understand the needs and the desires of the users, particularly with those unprecedented or unexpected changes? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think Elon Musk in many ways does understand what users want. Because he has one of the largest followers on the platform. At least he did when he bought it. So clearly, there's something that he is doing and saying that attracts people, right? So if you consider that as evidence of somebody who understands what people are looking for on the platform, he clearly has it. And the question is, what is it that people want? And in many ways, what people want from platforms like this is, ways to entertain themselves, ways to get informed, ways to stay connected, and sometimes it's playing to some of the most base, the lowest of our desires. I just want to see something controversial. I want to see somebody, say something rude. I want to, I want to, have a digital fist fight with others. And Elon Musk kind of goes into all of that. So I think he kind of understands what people are looking for. It's just that, can he translate that into a large enough following, and a following that can then translate into people who want to use this space for multiple applications. And I think one of the challenges with the direction that he has taken Twitter is that it has alienated, a significant portion of people who would like to be on Twitter and who historically have been on Twitter. And once you lose those people, then there is a risk that advertisers also do not want to stay associated with a platform that is about a rise in toxic speech, a rise in, essentially playing to the most base, the lowest of our desires and instincts. And a lot of brands don't want to be associated with that. And because the business model of a platform like Twitter is entirely based on advertising, you ruin the economics of the system. And when the economics gets destroyed, it's very difficult to pick back up.
Professor, interestingly, when we talk about social media, another buzzword that has been tossed around, which is disinformation. Again, I think last time that you and I, we had a thorough conversation also regarding this piece of information as well. Now, again, it shouldn't be a surprise that prior to this logo change from the blue bird into letter X, Musk also tried to implement, and also, of course, he did this, what we called a blue check system. So in other words, again, everyone today, if I'm not mistaken, you get on social media, it's not easy just to send someone a private message, especially towards the well-known, the celebrities, or also the luminaries that, who are rather credible and have a lot of followers. But before you can actually send them a message, you have to be verified. Now, with that said, based on the report, that as soon as the blue check system was implemented, accidents or incidents started to popping around in the internet. And again, we've seen those fake accounts, and also we've seen some of the accounts in trying to impersonating some of the logistics or actually legal entities. For example, the police department or even the mayor department, etc. Now, again, Professor, with all the changes, how do you evaluate that Musk strategy to counter disinformation? So in other words, you have to make the platform safe, and you have to know that when you implement a strategy that could actually revolutionize the tech world. So how much do you think Elon Musk really care about the information or care about this disinformation, and how much do you think he's willing to fight against it? What do you say to that?
Well, I'm not sure I kind of can completely interpret, how much Elon Musk cares about disinformation or facts for that matter. I think ultimately Elon Musk cares about getting attention. And the more attention he gets, the more engagement he gets on his own social media accounts. So if disinformation or toxic speech or something controversial is the path to engagement, the path to him being in the headlines, whether it's in social media or in traditional media, I think Elon Musk is just going to do it. So ultimately, I don't think I'd want to spend a whole lot of time intellectually, dissecting, some kind of a strategy that he might have. I really don't think he has, any grand plan other than he strongly believes that when more people are engaged on this platform, they will spend more time on this platform, and they would like to spend time not only sending messages or sharing news items, but they would also like to spend time on other applications. That's about it. And beyond that, Elon Musk really, really, really cares about himself. I don't really believe he wanted to take on Twitter. He had initially kind of put it out there, and then as circumstances essentially drove him to, acquiring it. I don't really believe that was part of some sort of a larger plan. And now that he owns it, he kind of has to deal with it, and he's trying to deal with it in ways that don't particularly reflect any kind of a well thought out strategy. Is somehow taking a few somewhat intuitive cuts at what he believes to be the best thing for Twitter, but none of this really adds up. So I wouldn't really spend a whole lot of time trying to break this apart into and pretend that this is some sort of a genius plan that needs to be understood.
Professor, what about his ambition? Again, as we mentioned in the intro, again, during numerous occasions that Elon Musk, either in private or openly, expressed his desire or also his interest in cooperating with the current political force. And again, we've seen that on social media, not just Twitter, but also Facebook and also any other social media platforms, initially those platforms and try to stay away from the geopolitical change. But in reality, we know that is not going to happen, particularly in the United States of America. We know the geopolitical change in the States is standing at the crossroads. Some believe that Twitter is actually playing a rather imperative role when we're looking at this political agenda. Now, again, Professor, coming back to you, is this really a mature or maybe a wise strategy for Elon Musk perhaps to join or to maybe to build a partnership with political change or political powers and etc.? And don't you think also that's a very risky and also unnecessary move for the social media platform like this?
Yes and no. As I mentioned, I think Elon Musk's driving motivation is attention to himself. And the more you tie yourself to political events, whether it's domestic or geopolitical, you get attention. So Elon Musk has tied himself to Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, who's the primary challenger to Donald Trump.
That's right.
On the Republican ticket. And Ron DeSantis isn't doing very well. And Ron DeSantis, his presidential campaign was launched on Twitter, thanks to, essentially that platform being given to him by Elon Musk. Now, of course, that launch didn't go very well. So I think, he's just he will just tie himself to any issue as long as, it puts the spotlight on him. Now, beyond Twitter, Elon Musk is actually playing a pretty significant geopolitical role because his Starlink satellite system is being brought into the political arena. It is being used in the war theater in Ukraine. He has also been threatening to, get into the revolts in Iran by giving access to the protesters in Iran on his Starlink system. So he is playing a significant role on the political front in many ways, not just through Twitter, but through his other businesses as well. I think some part of SpaceX has huge political implications because many of the people who are many of the clients of SpaceX are significant political players. So whether he likes it or not, politics is going to be a big part of Elon Musk's larger portfolio strategy. Is this a wise move? Ultimately, I think people are just fascinated by him. They see him and his products as useful in some situations, and some other situations it's not. And politicians are going to be opportunistic and are going to align with him when it's useful to them, and they will stand apart from him and perhaps even turn their backs on him when they see it, being toxic to their own interests. Is it a good strategy for Twitter? In some ways, maybe yes. It brings more followers to Twitter as you have more politics being discussed on the platform, because ultimately that is one of the reasons why people come on Twitter. They like to get information about, political news stories, and like to exchange such information and exchange comments and so on and so forth. But sometimes they follow politicians. So politics is an important part of the social discourse. So I think it is wise to stay within the realm of politics. It's just that, this is, you're playing with fire. If you get too closely aligned to one political side, then you alienate the other. And from a commercial standpoint, that's not a good idea.
Well, Professor, two more questions before letting you go. Speaking of playing with fire, let's talk about Elon Musk, his visit to China. Again, that was a quick trip. But meanwhile, after coming back from China, and he described the economy between US and China, and I quote, as conjoined twins. And also he stated his opposition to any move that can break this relationship. I remember, Professor, last time you also commented on his relationship from Twitter and also from other entities that related to China. What do you say to that today when we look at the geopolitical change, and how much do you think that, again, someone like Elon Musk can actually, I want to be careful, quote, to heal the relationship between the two countries, only perhaps not on this diplomatic level, but from this technological or perhaps even from the business level? How much do you think he really matters? Because again, when he went to China, that was such a big deal. And we've seen the reports, and also we've seen the media coverage one after another, even though the trip was short. But his comments and also his opinions and feedback about China actually matter a lot. What do you say to that?
Well, Elon Musk's visit to China, obviously there are multiple motivations, multiple reasons for it. Perhaps the single biggest one would be Tesla, which has a big market in China, and Tesla is also viewed with some suspicion by Chinese authorities. So it's important for Elon Musk to, travel to China and assuage the Chinese Communist Party leaders that the Tesla cars are not going around acting as essentially spying vehicles and picking up data on China as you drive around. So it's really important, for that reason alone. Beyond that, there are lots of other reasons for Elon Musk to be in China. I think Elon Musk's Starlink satellite system, his SpaceX initiatives. China is thinking of building a satellite network to rival Elon Musk's Starlink system. So it's important for Musk to, kind of get ahead of that. China could be a customer for SpaceX. I think there are many, many reasons why, for his business portfolio interests alone, he would like to have a good relationship with China. No question about it. As far as his Twitter interests are concerned, I think, he would like to create the equivalent of WeChat on Twitter. So, it's useful for him to travel to China and actually see how people use WeChat, on the ground, as opposed to, looking at it from a distance. So, and every business leader, whether it's Elon Musk or any other, would benefit from a lowering of tension between China and the West, because a more seamless connection between China and the West is better for businesses all around. And Elon Musk is, a business leader just like anybody else.
Professor, I want to wrap up our conversation by asking you a very simple question. Again, as you mentioned before, even though Elon Musk is no longer the CEO for the company, but meanwhile, his voice still matters today. Now, again, going back to the conversation you and I we had before, coming back today, Professor, how much do you think he can hold up in the company? Do you think that he's still going to be very interested in moving forward, or maybe it's time for him to really focus on other businesses, again, as we mentioned before, SpaceX or Tesla, and then really leave Twitter? And again, he changed the name, he changed the strategy. Right now, perhaps it's time for him to step aside and let someone else to drive behind the cars, and then meanwhile he can focus on something else to become a better person or become a better businessman. What do you think, Steph?
Well, I think, that time has passed. It's pretty clear that he is not going to step back from Twitter or X. He brought in a new CEO, right? And if you bring in a CEO, then what you should do is let the CEO be the chief executive. That's the first two letters in the acronym CEO. Let the chief executive make those decisions. And instead, he's acting like the owner of the company that he is, and he's making decisions which it's unclear whether Linda Yaccarino agreed with the changing of the brand from Twitter to X. As an advertising marketing person, I'm sure she has a very strong opinion on the importance of brand equity. So if you move from a brand that is as well known as Twitter, from the bluebird symbol that is as well known to an X, I'm sure she would have had a somewhat different opinion relative to where Elon Musk was. So it seems pretty clear to me that I don't think she's calling the shots. He's calling the shots. Is it better for him to just leave it to her? I don't even know whether Linda Yaccarino is a competent person to lead X at this point in time. So Elon Musk has, pretty much created the mess, and it's hard to imagine him stepping away from it. And he's continuing to add to the mess because he's doing, in addition to this, he's kind of calling for a cage match fight with Mark Zuckerberg, which also doesn't help in preserving the credibility of the platform and credibility of himself and any leadership team that he brings in. So, I'm sure it would have been a good idea for him to have stepped back and focus on some of his other businesses, but he believes he's far too clever to focus on one thing, so he focuses on everything. And as a result, not particularly focused on any single thing. And that seems to be showing a little bit. You can see many of his other businesses also struggling. And in the meantime, he's also started an AI company. Simultaneously, he's been calling for a 6-month moratorium on AI. So he's kind of all over the place. As I mentioned, I think we waste our time in going through these intellectual conversations, trying to come up with some kind of a retrospective strategic overlay on what Elon Musk does. I think he just acts instinctively, and he's a bright guy, obviously, and his instincts have been right in many situations. In this situation, I don't think so.
Well, again, Professor, it does sounds to me that Elon Musk and also Twitter and also other businesses for Elon Musk still have a long way to go. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to speak to Dr. Chakravorti. Again, Dr. Chakravorti is the Dean of Global Business at the Fletcher School at the Tufts University, and also he's the co-founder and the chair of Digital Planet. Well, sir, thank you so much for your time. It's always been a pleasure. Really appreciate your insights. We'd love to have you back on the show as we continue to discuss the social media, not just about Twitter, perhaps about any other innovative platforms. So thank you so much for doing this.